framing it's like, oh, there are all these tech workers making six figures. Don't call them exploited or indentured servants, which was strong language. But
what's going on, you guys? Today we have Emma Vigeland slamming Vivek Ramaswamy. He's been in the news. He's been a very hot topic lately, and Emma Vigeland goes in. Let's watch it.
Let's turn to this big H-1B fight, because it also sort of like dovetails into, you know, how Democrats should approach the Trump administration, or you know, anyone who's looking to sort of thwart a lot of the agenda of the Trump administration. It started out, I guess, with Vivek Ramaswamy saying that there was a cultural problem with Americans. That
native in quotes, which means
Native Americans,
white.
You know, of the traditional hue in this country, that we have become, you know, soft and not merit-based, which sounds a little woke, actually. It makes it seem like people are just getting by on their whiteness, but I don't think that's his point. His point was like, we're not, you know, striving for excellence, and only
because we like Zach Morris too much.
And only immigrant families.
I want to just give a little context for this. This is actually very. I think his comments fall into a particular tradition, which is, you know, like, if there's this sort of, you know, traditional like racism of the sort of, you know, Charles Murray bell curve type, that, you know, people of color have low IQ, are lazy, shiftless, welfare dependent, and Murray got attacked for that. And then he came out with like another book basically saying, well, you know what, this is actually also true of poor whites. They're also lazy, shiftless, welfare dependent, not getting married. And he thought, and then this is actually also J.D. Vance's original argument in Hillbilly Elegies, right? So there's a kind of contingent of the right that basically, I call it sort of like racism against poor people.
The right here, they're calling out Vivek Ramaswamy, saying that he overstepped the line, that he was biting off too much that he could chew by calling out the American culture, by calling out some that he really has no clue what he's talking about. And, you know, Vivek has actually, if you guys look, Vivek hasn't made a public appearance since he made those comments. He started to go underneath the surface, believe that he's going into hiding after he said all that crazy stuff.
You know, like it is, and it is like, it is an oddly.
This is also like Moynihan stuff. Even going back to Moynihan, late senator from New York. I mean, this was. But what's
the cultural? It's a sort of so-called cultural explanation. But I mean, the functional purpose of it is like, it does sort of feed into a kind of, you know, socially Darwinist view, which is, you know, one sees it in Silicon Valley, and someone like Elon Musk and Trump himself will talk more forthrightly about IQ. We need high IQ people, and I think the trap that we can fall into is because Ramaswamy and Musk are fighting, you know, like insane racists like Laura Loomer and Ann Coulter and Steve Bannon. You know, some people are thinking, oh, you know, like these Musk can be our ally. But if you actually look at what Musk and the others believe, I mean, they actually believe in basically like racism against poor people. We want like a hierarchical elite society, which will also draw in the best from all around the world, and also be organized in a way in which the boss, the Silicon Valley people, the Peter Thiels and the Musks, will have power over these employees. So, I mean, like, it's a social Darwinist vision that's not too far. It's another. I see it as another variation of racism rather than an alternative to racism.
All right, and let's separate out like that trap that you were talking about, because this is really important, I think, too. It's like, you know, how do you weigh in on this debate without necessarily saying I'm weighing in, you know, on the sort of second order reasons why someone is supportive of this, But
Yeah,
the other thing that's
I think one thing is there's two things. One,
So right here we have the speaker who's, I guess he's a guest speaker with them, Jeet. He's saying that, Vivek wants to turn this into a caste system, sort of how they have it in India. I believe that Jeet may be familiar with it. And yeah, Vivek is wanting to turn the entire country into just a very, very systematic, not caring about the human nature, about the humanness of people. It's all about, well, what are you providing? What are you bringing to the table? What are you, really sucking the life out of America and building this system that only may benefit people who really just worship the elites, not even I think eventually it ends up getting terrible for everybody, and I don't know who it actually benefits. He's a little crazy.
is the sort of traditional, Godzilla versus Mothra stance, which is, let them fight.
let them fight. Yeah.
Which is like, I think pretty valid. But I mean, having said that, I mean, like, I think the important thing to keep in mind is people on the left have long been critical of those visas, and I think for good reason. That this is essentially a guest workers program, which is to get people over who are employees who are doing these jobs who have less rights than American citizens, and the traditional, like, non-xenophobic concern is like, you actually, if you have immigrants, you want them to have the same rights as other people. And I think that there's a bunch of different ways of getting around this. I think one solution, which I am sort of partial to, is sectoral bargaining. That if one has
Right.
a kind of, to go back to Emma's point, like if one makes this a labor issue rather than an ethnicity issue, if one is able to organize these workers to, like, so that they're not like indentured, and then to get them not just in Silicon Valley, but like sort of poorer undocumented immigrants. If one can get them like labor rights, then that actually, like, I think solves a lot of the problems of being able to both get the workers you need, but not having it as them as sort of pawns of to the most Darwinist plutocrats in America.
But that's not what they want, right? And we said this yesterday, talking about immigration as a cudgel against a workforce that has less rights in this country, whether it be this HB1 situation where your visa and where you're living, your employer is like, if you get fired, you're screwed, you're out. So you're more beholden to your employers. And then same thing, of course, with deportation for undocumented workers. But like, Bernie was getting criticized for his statement on this front where he talked about American jobs. And that, by the way, and I think he could have focused a little bit more on international worker solidarity, but that's just like a quibble. American politicians talk about saving American jobs all the time, but suddenly all these liberals are going after Bernie Sanders because he's putting it within the context of labor exploitation. And I think that's very telling. They don't have a problem when it's used to drum up competition and militarism with China, or if it's to sell a merger or some, business opportunity. But when it's calling out labor exploitation by these companies, they're freaking out. And Warren Gunnels, who works for Sanders, made this point on Twitter, and I just think it's great because Eric Levitz was criticizing Sanders, and he said, I don't think Elon Musk should be allowed to hire H-1B analysts, accountants, or engineers from overseas at Tesla who are paid as little as $52,666 and can have their visa taken away from them by their boss if they complain about unfair or illegal working conditions. Like, the point there is that this framing, it's like, oh, there are all these tech workers making six figures. Don't call them exploited or indentured servants, which was strong language, but it functions in a similar manner. Like,
So there we have it, you guys. We have Emma Vigeland, who really cleared through all of the bullshit. She really said, look, let's pull up the actual salaries that these H-1B1 visas are paying for. Like, what are the salaries of the people that are receiving these H-1B1 visas? And we see that majority of them, or at least a lot of them, especially for Tesla, for Elon, who is a very big supporter of the H-1B1 visas, they're very, it's like medium. It's reaching around it's like 50, 60K. That's what these people that are supposedly supposed to be the most high end visas. These visas are for people that are specialists, that are experts. And Emma Vigeland is calling out that maybe you're wanting these just so you can exploit the the American people even more, exploit them by saying, hey, look, we can bring in these foreigners, these whoever it is that they're bringing in, and we can pay them a lot less. So maybe you should either take a lot less, maybe you should take on the culture of these people that we are bringing in, or you can get left behind. That's sort of what Vivek is wanting to say. And Emma Vigeland saying that's not right. You really are, even though she's saying it's a strong word, you want your indentured servitude. You really want almost something to be recreated maybe in a slavery type of setting. So it's very strong wording, but it is accurate given the facts, given the salaries, where we can see what they're doing. We can see what you're doing, Vivek, Elon. You guys are not slick at all. But that's Emma Vigeland and Sam Seder and Jeet here. They're calling Vivek out, Vivek Ramaswamy. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. It's another day in the progressive way.